Welcome to Echo of Crime YouTube channel. For many prisoners sentenced to death in the United States, the punishment does not begin with execution. It begins with waiting. Death row is not a single place, but a network of specialized prison units across multiple states, each designed to hold inmates who have been condemned by the courts. Facilities such as San Quentin State Prison became symbols of this reality, housing hundreds of death row inmates for decades. From the moment a judge pronounces the sentence, life changes instantly. The prisoner is separated from the general population and transferred into a world defined by isolation, routine, and uncertainty. Unlike portrayals in movies, death row is often quiet. Inmates are typically housed in single cells, spending most of their day alone. Movement is restricted, contact with others is limited, and every action is monitored. For many, this environment becomes permanent. Some prisoners arrive on death row in their 20s and remain there into old age, watching the world change from behind bars. Technology advances, laws shift, and entire generations pass, while time on death row moves slowly, measured not in days, but in appeals. The legal process officially begins immediately after sentencing. Capital cases automatically enter a lengthy appeals system designed to prevent wrongful executions. Lawyers begin reviewing trial transcripts, evidence, and procedure, searching for legal errors. These appeals can take years or decades, moving through state courts, federal courts, and sometimes the U.S. Supreme Court. For inmates, this process is both a lifeline and a source of torment, offering the possibility of reversal, while also extending the wait indefinitely. Daily life on death row follows strict routines. Meals are delivered through slots in cell doors. Exercise, when allowed, often takes place alone in small enclosed yards. Visits with family are rare and heavily controlled, usually conducted through glass. Phone calls are limited. Over time, relationships strain or disappear entirely. Parents grow old and die, children become adults, and connections to the outside world slowly fade. Many inmates describe death row as a place where life continues, but meaning becomes difficult to hold on to. Psychologically, the impact is profound. The constant awareness of a possible execution date, sometimes scheduled, delayed, and rescheduled multiple times, creates a state of chronic stress. Some inmates receive notices setting execution dates, only to have them halted at the last moment by court orders. Others live for decades without a date at all, trapped in limbo. This uncertainty has been described by courts and medical experts as a form of ongoing punishment separate from the execution itself. This is not a story about execution chambers alone, but about the years, sometimes lifetimes, that come before them. It is about men and women living under a sentence of death, navigating a legal system that moves slowly and deliberately, while time inside prison feels endless. Before the final appeals, before the last meals, and before the final hours, there is the waiting. And for many on death row, that waiting becomes the longest and most defining part of the sentence. As years pass on death row, the legal process becomes the central force shaping an inmate's existence. After the initial conviction and sentencing, capital punishment cases automatically enter a long chain of appeals meant to safeguard against wrongful executions. These appeals are not quick or simple. They involve multiple layers of review, beginning with state appellate courts and often moving into federal courts. For prisoners, this process becomes a second life, one dominated by paperwork, legal visits, and constant uncertainty about what comes next. Attorneys play a critical role during this phase. Defense teams examine every detail of the original trial, searching for errors that could justify overturning the sentence or conviction. Claims may involve improper jury instructions, mishandled evidence, ineffective legal representation, or new information that was not available at trial. In some cases, appeals reveal serious flaws that lead to reduced sentences or retrials. In others, courts deny each request, reinforcing the original death sentence. The outcome can take years to determine, and during that time, inmates remain confined to death row. For many condemned prisoners, this legal struggle becomes their primary connection to hope. A single court ruling can mean the difference between life and death. Yet hope is fragile. Appeals are often denied after long delays, leaving inmates to absorb devastating news again and again. Some prisoners receive execution dates while appeals are still pending, forcing lawyers to file emergency motions just days or hours before the scheduled execution. These last-minute legal battles are common and deeply stressful for everyone involved. While the courts deliberate, daily life on death row remains rigid and isolating. Prisoners follow strict routines with little variation. Legal mail arrives sporadically, sometimes bringing encouragement, sometimes delivering crushing setbacks. Visits from attorneys become some of the most meaningful human interactions inmates experience. These meetings are not only about legal strategy. They are moments where prisoners confront the reality of their situation, discuss fears, and prepare mentally for possible outcomes. The appeals process also takes a toll on families. Loved ones attend hearings, wait for rulings, and live with years of emotional exhaustion. Some families of victims follow these proceedings closely, seeking finality, while families of inmates cling to the possibility of reversal. The legal system moves carefully and deliberately, but the human cost accumulates on all sides. Each delay extends the waiting, and each denial brings the reality of execution closer. Over time, some prisoners exhaust all standard appeals. When this happens, their cases enter the final phase: clemency petitions and last appeals. Clemency is not a legal right. It is a discretionary decision made by governors or parole boards. These petitions often argue for mercy based on rehabilitation, mental health concerns, or doubts about guilt. Clemency grants are rare, but they represent one of the last chances for a condemned prisoner to avoid execution. For years or decades, condemned inmates live between rulings and deadlines, sustained by legal arguments that may or may not succeed. The appeals process is designed to ensure justice, but it also stretches punishment over time, turning waiting itself into a defining part of the sentence. Before the final days arrive, there are countless nights spent hoping a court somewhere will rule differently, and knowing that eventually, those chances may run out. When all standard appeals have been exhausted, life on death row enters its most intense and final phase. For condemned prisoners, this is the point where the abstract idea of execution becomes real. Courts may issue an official execution date, triggering a tightly controlled sequence of legal, administrative, and prison procedures. The atmosphere on death row changes immediately. Security increases, movement becomes even more restricted, and inmates are placed under constant observation. Every remaining moment is documented, scheduled, and monitored. In the weeks or days leading up to a scheduled execution, attorneys often file last-minute appeals in state and federal courts. These filings may raise newly discovered evidence, procedural concerns, or constitutional arguments. Some cases are halted just hours before an execution due to emergency court orders, while others proceed despite intense legal effort. This uncertainty creates extreme psychological pressure. Prisoners may prepare for death multiple times, only to have executions delayed or rescheduled, extending the emotional toll indefinitely. During this period, final visits are arranged. Prisoners may be allowed to see close family members, spiritual advisors, and legal counsel under strict supervision. These visits are often brief, conducted through glass or in controlled rooms, and deeply emotional. For some inmates, these are the last moments of human connection outside prison staff. Letters are written, final statements are prepared, and personal belongings are inventoried. The prison routine narrows until everything revolves around the execution timeline. As the final hours approach, procedures become exact and unchanging. Prison staff follow detailed protocols designed to ensure security and legal compliance. Inmates are moved to special holding areas near the execution chamber. Medical checks are conducted, and witnesses, often including officials, journalists, and family representatives, are notified. The process is quiet, controlled, and deliberately clinical, reflecting the state's effort to carry out the sentence according to law rather than emotion. Not all death row stories end with execution. Some inmates die of natural causes after decades of waiting. Others have their sentences overturned or commuted late in the process. In recent years, changes in law, DNA testing, and shifting public opinion have led to increased scrutiny of capital punishment. Some states have halted executions altogether, leaving death row inmates in permanent limbo, condemned, but not scheduled to die. This uncertainty has created a new reality where death row exists without a clear end. The final days of condemned prisoners are shaped as much by waiting and legal struggle as by the execution itself. Capital punishment is not a single event. It is a prolonged process that unfolds over years, sometimes decades. Whether a case ends in execution, commutation, or death from natural causes, the sentence reshapes every remaining moment of life. For those on death row, the final chapter is written slowly, under constant supervision, where law, morality, and finality intersect in the most irreversible way possible.